Right, now a last word on the Agony books. Obviously, everyone knows Paul did Sweet Agony in 1990. I followed it up with Sykes' Unfinished Agony and Further Agony in 2017. So there was nothing 2018, nothing 2019, and then this year came this book, Paul Sykes' Final Agony. What's this book about? For the first time, in my own words, I just basically, by the time I'd done this point, I'd done something like eight years of research. There's a lot of funny tales in there. I mean, as I said to you the other day, it's all my words, barring one chapter, which is, I think it's around 19-20 pages from a former top-ranking Wakefield, chief of police. When I first got in contact with him, I thought there's no way you actually will speak to me, and he did, and he reeled off his many how can I put it? You know what I mean? He'd met Paul at the start of his life, or I think he'd basically met him when he was the man about town, and the last time he'd seen him was more to the end of his life. So he's seen him for the ferocious kind of giant he was, and he's seen how low he got to, and that for me, that was a really surreal listening to him, because this is a guy who's basically watched his rapid or kind of slowly decline. So this is someone who'd arrested him dozens of times, and it's all good stories need an end. I'm done now with Paul Sykes. The only thing I'd ever do would be if someone like one of his wives came to me, which is never going to be the case. I'm really think the world of Pauline. She's a great friend of mine, and I've never spoken to the other two, but the feedback I've got is it's just they're not nice memories. Or they've got their own memories and basically leave it at that. But that's the thing with anyone saying, "Oh, well, you shouldn't write these books." Listen, if someone out there wanted to write a book about David Beckham tomorrow, there's not a great deal of anyone that you could. It's like once you're famous or infamous or notorious or whatever, once you put yourself in the public spotlight, you then, you're there to be shot at. And there's not really, I mean, I'll give you an example. Donald Trump was the most powerful man in the world at one point, or, he basically had the most power. He couldn't stop a book being written about him. So, listen, for the people who, might be against this, listen, Paul Sykes written his own book. And yes, we know, I mean, he featured in documentaries, not one but two. Not forgetting there was Danger Men, which was never released. But War Cry Publishing, we've dug it out. It's on YouTube. So Paul was, he did his books, he did his documentaries. He was a professional boxer, competing at British and Commonwealth levels. That's a really, really fantastic standard. So he was kind of famous before he became infamous, if that makes sense. The book itself, I mean, as I said, apart from my voice, there's a chapter on the police, but it basically, yes, you should read them in order. Sweet Agony, Unfinished Agony, Further Agony, and Final Agony. But basically, obviously, Sweet Agony was Paul's words. The other two were mine, just to be curious of saying, right, how did this? But this is basically from the cradle to the grave, if you like. This is, I basically start at the beginning of Paul's life. I wanted to keep this factual. I could have put so much hearsay in this book, but I didn't. What are we on now? It's just under 200 pages. I could have made this 350 easy. I could have put the price up, but I wanted to keep this really, really factual. And for me to do that, I couldn't listen to the hearsay. I had to listen to the people who'd looked after him when he was at his lowest. I had to listen to several police officers, and I had to, obviously, I've did my own research. Wakefield Express, Wakefield Archives, even the family tree, all this kind of stuff. So I defy. And listen, we've all got different opinions on it, but everything in that book is basically, it basically breaks Paul's life down from being a young bully kid. It's got poetry in there. It's got Delroy Showers, which is very cultured. As I always say about Delroy, he's an education to be. And when you buy the book and you read this, you'll realise it's not a normal chapter with the words he uses. And I toned that down a little bit as well. But it basically explains Paul's beginning, his amateur being a boxer and being going into the pro game, the women's. Listen, I couldn't do a book on Paul Sykes and have the proper credentials if I didn't answer them allegations, which everyone's read. Was he? Wasn't he? You've read him on the forums. You read him on Facebook. You read him on YouTube. What were the facts? I got the facts in there. So I've put them in the book. I spoke about his issues with, not only with alcohol, it was with substances as well. What was Paul's greatest? Listen, he was an incredibly intelligent guy, but I think probably his greatest asset was probably what made him his most unique and certainly the most famous, and it was his fighting ability. It's always look on the bright side of life. I've finished it off, and life after death, I've give the final word, and that is my last word on Paul Sykes. It's now over to Western Edge Pictures, Vaughan Civil and the guys. I know the plan is they're basically going to be making a Paul Sykes film, which the synopsis or the blurb it got released. I knew of this from about two years maybe before they released it to the world, and they released it to the world last year. They themselves from the website. Obviously, it's not the ideal time to make any films at the minute. I know they still have been busy now. They're doing the Paul Gascoigne one. Over the last various couple of years, they've done the what have they done? They've done stuff with Billy Piper, Prevenge, which was a British horror film. They did the Oscar Pistorius film. They've done the Joe Calzaghe film. So these guys, they're based in Wales and London. They come with great, credentials in the film industry. Vaughan Civil is absolutely fascinated with Paul Sykes. He was absolutely over the moon because he thought there was just the sweet agony, the unfinished agony, and the further agony for the script. When we were like, right, put that in as well. So yeah, spoke to Warcry Press has spoke to him, and yeah, he's left a very, very positive review on it. I actually spoke to his receptionist about 2 years back, who said he's as obsessed as you. He'll often walk around the office with a Yorkshire accent doing his one-liners and that. How big will the film be? Only time will tell. I'd hate to think of it to be something along something as what the Lenny McLean film was, because this is just my opinion. I'm not slagging anyone's work off. but I just think it could have been so much more. I thought the documentary was fantastic, and the correct people made that who were around Lenny McLean. And obviously, the plan is to release the film on Sykesy and have a documentary to go along the same time with it. So the documentary, she's talking about the real. I know there's a few of them not really. You know, your David Dunfords are gone, your Ronnie Trelfalls, but there still is people like Delroy Showers, John Spenceley, a good friend of mine, who's he, you know, the stories he's just told me. And every time I'm in his company, I think I must write that one down. You know, he's just phenomenal because he spent so much time with him. He lived with him. He he was the reason basically why he became a professional boxer in the first place. Along with him and Tommy Miller, John was more or less on the North East Boxing Board of Control as a pro, and he said, "Listen, you know, I know he's been out robbing banks, but I'll let him live with me. Give him a chance." It's quite unbelievable, really, because when Paul Sykes was out, probably at the greatest time for him to turn pro in 1973 for them 9 months, he applied. I mean, he sparred with he sparred with Joe Fraser, Bunny Johnson, who was a British champion at the time, and he basically, you know, he was down training at the Thomas à Becket gym. And that would have been the perfect time for Paul to turn over. At the time, he'll have been, let me think, 26, 27. That would have been the perfect. So I don't quite understand because, you know, he was knocked back by the Yorkshire British Boxing Board of Control. I mean, I've even come across a letter written by Betty Sykes, which was Paul's mum, writing to the Boxing News in 1973, saying give him a license. You know, I don't quite understand how Paul did another armed robbery. He basically did what was it he did? He did a job on the bookies in Haverton Hill, which is in between Middlesbrough and Hartlepool. Got 5 years for that. Which he served about 4.5, because he never ever got for early release. He always literally did his full sentence and the rest, and maybe some time added. But so he was released in the March of 1977 when he was nearly 30. So his best years, without a shadow of a doubt, certainly from a boxing point of view, were eaten by the locusts, wasted in prison. But he then, after another armed robbery from 1973, got his license. So obviously this is down to Tommy Miller and John Spenceley. But yeah, listen, guys, it's been an incredible journey on a guy that listen, I don't claim to be an expert on Paul Sykes. I never have. I know there's people out there criticising me, saying, he never met him, how could he write it? You know, but what I have done is I went to the correct people, you know, and for people who say, you know, I mean, listen, I've gotten to, when you look at them 3 books, you've got his only sibling, you've got his niece, you've got 2 of his sons, you've got victims, you've got enemies, you've got best friends, you've got, you know, and you know, I'm happy that I've kind of set out to what I wanted to do. And that was only all I ever wanted to do, was just find out who the hell was that crazy guy on YouTube talking about punching sharks. And I think I've achieved that. And hopefully I've kind of brought it all to you. Will there be more books on Paul Sykes? I'd love to think so. You know, I know I've spoken to members of the family who have suggested it, who have even threatened it and said, you know, we'll tell our side kind of thing. And I, for one, would be the first buyer. Will it happen? I don't know. But yeah, it's he was certainly an unbelievable character, completely unique, and Paul Sykes alone, him alone regardless of anything else I've ever done, your Lee Duffys, your Roy Shaws, your Dominic Neguses. I'm going to be hopefully working with Alex Reid now in the new year, and basically, if it wasn't for Paul Sykes, I would never have ever became an author. So I've got a lot to thank the memory of Paul Sykes for, and I only hope I've done justice. So I'm going to leave this video earlier than possible because my soon-to-be dead dog going to the halal needs a wee, so I've got to let her out. So yeah, I will be back with more videos on lots of things that we covered. So thank you so much for supporting our page. Can I just say as well, Georgie, be quiet, 2 minutes. Can I just say as well, most of my books support registered charities, and yeah, you know, charities like the Bradley Lowry Foundation, Middlesbrough Cancer Ward, that supports the Frankie Lee Booth Fund. You know, so God, that dog. Right, sorry guys, and I'll be back. I'll speak to you soon. God bless.